Once upon a time, in a small village at the edge of a vast forest, there lived a kind and loyal dog named Charlie. Charlie was not like any other dog in the village. He was bigger, fluffier, and smarter than any of the other dogs. His shiny black fur and cute brown eyes made everyone who saw him fall in love with him instantly. Charlie lived with his owner, a kind old woman who loved him dearly. She would always take care of Charlie and make sure that he had everything he needed. She would take him for long walks in the forest and play with him in the open fields. Charlie loved his owner and would always do everything to protect her and keep her safe. One day, as Charlie and his owner were out for their usual walk in the forest, they heard a strange noise coming from a nearby bush. Charlie, being the brave dog he was, ran towards the bush to investigate. As he got closer, he saw a little fairy trapped in a spider's web. The fairy was crying for help, and Charlie knew he had to act fast. With all his might, Charlie tried to break the web, but it was too strong. He knew he needed help, and so he ran back to his owner, barking loudly to get her attention. When she saw Charlie, she knew something was wrong and followed him back to the bush where the fairy was trapped. Charlie's owner was amazed to see the little fairy, and she knew she had to help her. With her small scissors, she carefully cut the web, freeing the fairy. The fairy was grateful to Charlie and his owner and promised to grant them each a wish. Charlie's owner wished for good health and happiness for her and her beloved dog. The fairy smiled and granted her wish, and from that day forward, Charlie and his owner lived a long and happy life together. But little did they know, the fairy had a special gift in store for Charlie. She had noticed that Charlie was not like any other dog, and she wanted to reward him for his bravery and kindness. She granted him the gift of speech, making him the only dog in the village who could talk. At first, Charlie was shocked and amazed that he could speak. He barked, and to his surprise, he could hear himself speaking. He quickly ran to his owner and told her the news, but she couldn't understand him. Charlie realized that he had to be careful and only speak when he was alone with the fairy or his owner. Charlie loved his new gift, and he spent most of his days exploring the forest and talking to the animals. He made friends with the squirrels, the rabbits, and the birds, and they would often play games and have fun together. But Charlie soon realized that being the only talking dog in the village had its downsides. The other dogs didn't understand him, and they would often bark and growl at him, making fun of him for being different. Charlie was sad and lonely, and he wished he could make friends with the other dogs. One day, as he was walking in the village, he heard a young boy crying. He followed the sound and saw a little boy being bullied by a group of dogs. Charlie knew he had to act fast, and he ran towards the dogs, barking loudly to get their attention. The other dogs were surprised to hear Charlie speak, and they stopped in their tracks. Charlie stood in front of the young boy and growled at the other dogs, telling them to stop bullying him. The other dogs were ashamed of their behavior and apologized to the young boy. From that day on, the other dogs started to see Charlie in a different light. They realized that he was not just a talking dog, but a brave and loyal friend who stood up for what was right. They started to include him in their activities, and Charlie was overjoyed to finally have friends among his own kind. But despite his newfound friends, Charlie still felt like he didn't quite fit in. He was still the only talking dog in the village, and he knew that some of the other animals were scared of him because of his gift. One day, as he was wandering through the forest, Charlie came across a group of animals gathered around a large oak tree. They were all talking excitedly and pointing up at the tree. Charlie couldn't see what they were looking at, so he pushed his way through the crowd to get a better view. As he looked up, he saw a tiny bird trapped in a branch. The bird had been trying to build a nest but had gotten its foot stuck in the branch. Charlie knew he had to help, so he called on his friends to help him save the bird. The squirrels climbed up the tree and started to nibble away at the branch, while the rabbits dug a hole in the ground to soften the bird's landing. Charlie barked out orders, coordinating the rescue effort and making sure everyone was working together. Finally, with a loud snap, the branch broke, and the bird was free. It flew down to the ground, and all the animals cheered. The bird was so grateful that it offered to teach Charlie how to fly. At first, Charlie was skeptical. He was a dog, after all. But the bird insisted, and so Charlie agreed to give it a try. With the bird's help, Charlie learned to flap his wings and lift off the ground. He was amazed by the feeling of flying and couldn't believe that he was actually doing it. From that day on, Charlie spent most of his time in the air, soaring over the treetops and exploring the skies. He made friends with the other birds and would often join them on their flights. He even taught his new friends how to speak dog language, and they would have long conversations in the sky. Charlie was happy and content, and he knew that he had found his true calling. He had been given the gift of speech, but it was his bravery, loyalty, and kindness that had made him special. He had used his gift to help others, and in doing so, he had found his own happiness. And so, Charlie continued to live his life, exploring the forest, playing with his friends, and helping those in need. He may have been a talking dog, but to those who knew him, he was so much more. He was a hero, a friend, and a symbol of everything that was good and true in the world. As the years went by, Charlie grew older, and his fur started to turn grey. His owner had passed away, but he still had his friends in the forest, and they continued to play and have adventures together.